Standing by in Simi Valley is Craig Shirley, who wrote Nancy and Ronald Reagan. The title of the book, Craig, forgive me, Last Act, The Final Years and Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan. Craig, it's good to speak to you again. What are your thoughts today as you enter this kind of throwback crowd that's almost a time capsule of the last 2 or 3 decades of the last century?
Bittersweet. It was our Camelot. Is that when Reagan came and Mrs. Reagan went to Washington in 1980, they were followed by hundreds, even thousands of young, motivated conservatives interested in ideas, interested in changing the government, interested in conservatism. And she was always a part of it. You know, it's once said that if Ronald Reagan wanted to be a shoe salesman, Nancy Reagan would have made sure he was the best shoe salesman in the world. She didn't try to dictate his career, but she did try to help his career. She didn't get much involved in policy. I think that's been overstated this week, but she definitely got involved in politics, and she definitely got involved in personnel. His campaign manager in 1980 was hurting him, she thought. She had a hand in his ouster and 2 aides. She also got involved in politics. Is that little-known story about the famous now Nashua debate was that Reagan was angry with George W. Bush, and he was going to walk out with all the other candidates. And she said to him, she said, look, if you walk out, it's going to look like you're running away from a fight. You need to walk in there, and I'll walk in there together. And he saw the wisdom in her suggestion, and he walked in. The other candidates walked in, and then he got the chance to issue the famous line, Mr. Green, I'm paying for this microphone. But it never would have happened without Nancy Reagan. She also obviously had a direct hand in the ouster of Don Reagan, and also, as Chris pointed out, had a direct hand in the hiring of Jim Baker. Was probably one of the sagest decisions that Ronald Reagan ever made. So she had a hand. She had a deft hand. She was once described as a Metternich in Adolfo dresses, and I think that's a great compliment to her. Metternich was the great Australian diplomat, and he brought people together, and she did. Sometimes she had to lay down the law, but she also made sure that people were working together to help Reagan achieve his agenda.
Well, you've been talking. We watched Tom Selleck take his seat, known during the Reagan era as Magnum PI, these days associated with Blue Bloods. You mentioned Don Reagan. There's a guy who used to run Merrill Lynch, was clearly used to dealing with people a certain way, being dealt with a certain way, and he quickly learned that you don't hang up on Nancy Reagan.
No, you do not hang up on Nancy Reagan. He did that several times, too. He didn't take Jim Baker's advice.
No, that is for sure.